ChuckWagon MTG is sponsored by BC Comics and Games. Thank you for joining us for another great video on ChuckWagon MTG. So, Unstable releases this Friday, and no doubt some of you plan on drafting this wonderfully fun set. Now, I've heard more than a few people express concern that they really had no idea how contraptions really work, and that they were still kind of confused even after reading up on them. So we put together a video to show how contraptions work and what you need to know to maximize how they can work for you in a draft style setting. Contraptions are artifact cards that are part of the new Unstable set, and you're going to be drafting them just like any other card in Magic. Or you can not draft them at all. It's up to you, but you're going to be really missing out on some sweet abilities. Now, just like any other card, there is no limit to how many copies of the same card can be in your draft deck. Right now is probably a good time to note that the Sprocket card that we're going to be using to keep track of which Sprocket our crank counter is on is actually the backside of the contraption cards. So you went through the draft, got your cards, it's all over now, and now you have a small stack of contraption cards. When you play, your contraptions do not go into your deck. Instead, they go into a separate deck next to your main deck. You will also have a Sprocket card that will be out at the beginning of the game. Now, this card starts the game with a crank counter on Sprocket number 3. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control a contraption, you move your crank counter to the next Sprocket. It moves from left to right in order of Sprocket number 1, Sprocket number 2, then Sprocket number 3. After Sprocket number 3, it moves back to Sprocket number 1. Throughout the game, you'll be instructed to assemble contraptions. When you assemble a contraption, you take the top card from your contraption deck and you put it face up under one of the sprockets on your Sprocket card. Now you can choose which sprocket your contraption will go under. For example, we cast Insight, which is a sorcery for X and 2 blue mana. You assemble X contraptions. For this example, X is going to be 2. So we're going to assemble 2 contraptions, which will be us putting the top 2 cards from our contraption deck under the sprockets of our choice. Now, let's put them both underneath Sprocket number 1. We got Division Table, which says whenever you crank Division Table, target player loses 2 life, and Goblin Slingshot, which says whenever you crank Goblin Slingshot, creatures you control get +2/+0 and gain trample until end of turn. So on our next upkeep, we get to move our crank counter from Sprocket number 3 to Sprocket number 1. That means we can activate, or crank, both Division Table and Goblin Slingshot if we want to. Or we can activate just one, or we can not activate them at all. Either way, we can also activate them in any order that we choose. During our next upkeep, we move the crank counter to the next Sprocket, but since we have no contraptions under it, nothing really happens. So let's say during our opponent's turn, we get to cast First Pick, which is an instant spell for 3 generic and 1 green mana that says destroy target artifact or enchantment, and then assemble a contraption. So we get to take the top card of our contraption deck and we put it face up on one of our sprockets. Since on our next upkeep our crank counter will be moved to the 3rd sprocket, it makes the most sense to put it on that one. This time we get Genetic Recombinator. It's a contraption that says whenever you crank Genetic Recombinator, up to 2 target creatures each get +2/+2 until end of turn. Then, on our upkeep, we move our crank counter from Sprocket number 2 to Sprocket number 3, and we get to activate Genetic Recombinator. One more thing to remember is that when contraptions are destroyed, because after all they are artifacts and permanents and they can be targeted, they do not go to the graveyard. They have their own graveyard and it's called the Scrapyard. So hopefully this video on how contraptions work clears up any confusion and helps create an insanely fun experience at any events you happen to attend. If you happen to have any awesome moments from any Unstable events that you'd like to share, we'd love to hear them in the comment section below. I want to thank you very much for watching this video we have here today. If you liked what you saw, click that like button, hit subscribe, and share to your heart's content. Share it with your friends, your family, your loved ones, and your pets. Everyone could use a little more magic in their lives. Once again, thank you very much for watching, and as always, you can find us on Facebook and Twitter, ChuckWagon MTG. Now, if you could do us a huge favor and take a brief moment to check out this message from our sponsor. ChuckWagon MTG is sponsored by BC Comics and Games. They have 3 different locations, and they run Magic events every Monday through Saturday, and their Friday Night Magic consists of Standard, Modern, and Legacy every week. This is why I've personally made BC Comics and Games my home gaming store.